Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. USA Today has just granted the Arctic a 20-year reprieve. They say summers may be ice-free in the Arctic as soon as 2034, a new study suggests. Polar bears may disappear. Arctic sea ice keeps shrinking. Here's what that means for the planet. This may sound bad, but they just granted the Arctic a 20-year reprieve. In 2009, USA Today reported that the polar ice cap may disappear by the summer of 2014. So the polar bears can hibernate a little bit easier in the minus 40-degree temperatures in the Arctic, knowing that they've been granted until the year 2034 before they go extinct. But the reality is that they're probably extinct already. In 1958, the New York Times predicted that the Arctic would be ice-free within a generation. Climate experts, who consider themselves to be experts in just about every topic, say that polar bears can't survive without year-round sea ice. That's a pretty bold and scary claim. Let's look at the historical record and see if it's true. For a long period of time, from 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, the Arctic was periodically ice-free, yet the polar bears survived. Polar bears don't need to have ice all summer long. The polar bear population in the Hudson Bay goes without ice for many months every year. The idea that polar bears need ice 12 months a year is not backed up by any scientific evidence. That's just one more superstition started by climate alarmists. Another one is that Arctic sea ice has some correlation with carbon dioxide. The Arctic was ice-free 6,000 years ago when CO2 levels were much lower than they are now. This shows us unequivocally that atmospheric CO2 levels do not control Arctic sea ice extent. And another superstition which they persist in is that the Arctic is melting. Reality is that Arctic ice is growing very quickly and extent is the highest in many years. According to today's map from the National Snow and Ice Data Center, the ice edge is currently very close to the 1981 to 2010 median. So apparently the Arctic is not ice-free as USA Today predicted for 2014. This graph shows Arctic sea ice extent every day since January 1, 2006. There's no indication that the ice has been disappearing over the last 14 years. In order to get an ice-free Arctic, the summer minimums would have to decline. This graph shows the minimum Arctic sea ice extent from 2007 through 2019. The trend is dead flat. There's no indication once again that Arctic ice is disappearing. There was a decline in Arctic sea ice extent from the late 1980s until about the year 2007, but there hasn't been any since then. The decline of Arctic sea ice is one more superstition which is being propagated by the press and by scientists whose funding depends on alarm about the Arctic climate. And it isn't clear to me why they're making predictions about the year 2034, because according to climate expert Alexandria Cortez in the Washington Post, the world's going to end in the year 2030 anyway. And it's even worse at the other pole. According to the New York Daily News, Antarctica has warmed 37 degrees in the last 50 years and they've lost 600% of their ice. If I lost 600% of my body weight, I'd be down to minus 1,000 pounds. That would certainly make cycling up hills a lot easier. You really can't make this stuff up. We don't need Monty Python's Flying Circus anymore because we have climate academics and climate journalists to provide the entertainment for us. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.